Today, we'll be solving LeetCode 130, Surrounded Regions. In this problem, we are given a two-dimensional grid of characters. Each cell is either the letter X or the letter O. A region is formed by connecting adjacent O cells horizontally or vertically. A region is considered surrounded if it is completely enclosed by X cells, and importantly, none of the O cells in that region touch the edge of the board. Our task is to capture all surrounded regions by flipping every O inside them into X. Now, let's think carefully about how to approach this. At first, you might think we need to find every region of O's and check whether it touches the border or not. But there's a simpler way. Instead of focusing on the surrounded regions, we can focus on the opposite, the safe regions. A safe region is a group of O's that either touches the border directly or is connected to an O that touches the border. These O's should never be flipped. So, our strategy will be to mark all the safe O's, and then flip everything else. Here's how we do it. First, we scan the border of the board, the first row, the last row, the first column, and the last column. For every O we find there, we run a depth-first search, or DFS, and mark that O and all connected O's as safe. Next, once we've marked all the safe cells, we go through the entire board. If a cell is marked safe, we turn it back into an O. If a cell is an O but was not marked safe, then it must be surrounded, so we flip it into an X. Now, let's carefully go through the code line by line. We define a function called solve that takes in the board. Since we are updating the board in place, we don't need to return anything. The first thing we do is check if the board is empty by saying if not board or not board at 0, then return immediately. Next, we get the number of rows by saying rows equals length of board, and the number of columns by saying cols equals length of board at 0. We then define a helper function called DFS that takes in row R and column C. The very first thing inside DFS is a boundary check. We say if R is less than 0 or C is less than 0 or R is greater than or equal to rows or C is greater than or equal to cols or board at R and C is not equal to O, then return immediately. This means we are either out of bounds or we are not on an O cell, so there is nothing to process. If we are on a valid O cell, we mark it as safe by temporarily changing it to the letter S. This way, we know this O should not be flipped later. After marking, we call DFS on all four directions. We say DFS of R plus 1 and C to go down, DFS of R minus 1 and C to go up, DFS of R and C plus 1 to go right, and DFS of R and C minus 1 to go left. This explores the entire connected region of O's. Now, we need to start marking safe regions from the border. So we loop through every cell in the first row and the last row, and if board at 0, C is O, or board at rows minus 1, C is O, we call DFS on those cells. Then, we loop through every cell in the first column and the last column, and if board at R, 0 is O, or board at R, cols minus 1 is O, we call DFS on those cells. This way, all O's that touch the border or connect to the border get marked as safe. Once this is done, we scan the entire board again. For each cell, if board at R and C is equal to O, we know it is not safe, so we flip it into an X. If board at R and C is equal to S, we flip it back into O, since we marked it safe earlier. Finally, the board is updated in place with all surrounded regions captured. In terms of time complexity, this solution runs in O of m times n, where m is the number of rows and n is the number of columns, because in the worst case, we visit each cell once during DFS and once during the final scan. The space complexity is O of m times n in the worst case due to the recursion stack if the board is full of O's. And that's how you solve LeetCode 130, Surrounded Regions. Thank you for watching and let's keep learning.